if I just speak really loudly? Like
I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sam, can you hear me? I'm waiting to get a message from Sam so that we can... Yeah, we did it! Awesome job, everybody. No thanks to you, Zoom, motherfuckers. And Sam's having trouble connecting the video to Facebook through Zoom. So it's just one of those diggity dog days. And it's a great way to segue into the message of the week because it is about that damn shit. So this is from a gentleman I'm very fond of, listen to him a lot. He's got his own podcast. He's got all kinds of crazy things. The impeccable Gary Vaynerchuk. Are you familiar with Gary Vaynerchuk?
Oh, yes, I am. Yes,
okay, cool.
I follow him.
So this is something he said in one of his recent Tea with Gary V's. This is about doing over dwelling. Right now, 98% of people are going to dwell, and the 2% that do and make and create and go on offense and realize an opportunity will succeed 10x, and that's the way the game is played. So no crying over your audio. Oh, we should know about that, right? So this show is all about music and musicians and the crazy shit that happens. And how many gigs have you gotten to and they're like, I can't hear you, or your string pops, or like, what the?
Oh man, I have a great story about that actually. It's about my
tell us.
Very first gig in Los Angeles. So I moved here from New York. I'd lived in New York for like 11 years. I moved to Los Angeles in July, and the very first gig I got was opening for a Dodgers game. Actually.
Oh, wow.
Dodger Stadium. And I played with Vitamin String Quartet. And
this is clearly pre-COVID.
Oh, yeah. This was last summer, before, we knew it was going to hit us. And I get there, they've mic'd our instruments and everything, and we start playing, and I just hear this, like, vast boom of, like, feedback filling the entire stadium, and it was my cello that was back. The microphone was just picking up the vibrations of my instruments so poorly.
And were you the only cellist?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's dope. So they were like, fucking cellist, never again.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've wrecked audio for like an audience of like, what is that, like 10,000 people or something.
Yeah, that's dope. That's dope. Well, depending on how many listeners we have today, you could contribute to another 10,000 possibly.
You're welcome.
I fucking love it. So how you doing otherwise?
I'm really good, man. I'm really, I'm busy. I've been keeping myself busy since all of this craziness happened. Thankfully, since I moved here, I've been building out 2 businesses. One of them is, one of them took off in just the way it was meant to, which is coaching professionally for musicians and their careers. And the other one was freelancing in Los Angeles as a cellist. Now, obviously, that has gone through a big transformation since this all started.
Yeah, and we'll get to that. Yeah.
So, do you want me to go into it now at all, or?
Whatever you want to do. There's no script. I lost it. This is like improv. This is like Charles Ives.
I mean, we'll get into it later because I kind of want to talk about like what has been keeping me afloat and like that quote that you just read of like Gary V's is just like so spot on. I mean, this is the thing that I want to point out though is that in a time like this in which like it's not that reality has shifted, right? Like reality's always been like weird and chaotic. It's just that like we tend to think there's some rule book we're trying to follow that we don't have access to, but the rules are somewhere out there, right? And we're always trying to figure out, well, what's the right thing to do? What's the right way to grow business? The right way to like express myself as an artist, right? And we all like automatically fall into this. And now the world is, showing us that there were never any rules and there are no rules, right? So it's just one big experiment. And that's good news because if you can remember that it's really you creating everything, you're not going to go wrong. Like you can just remember it's an experiment and it's about trying stuff out. When we get stuck and dwelling and feel helpless and pitted against the circumstances is when we really sink. That said, I think that because this has been like such a huge shift in like our normal framework of reality, all of us have to have gone through some kind of like processing time to just like really, like have this sink in. Like things are different now. Things are not going to look the way that you planned them out to be for the next year. Your source of income might change. The way that you make income might change. The pace at which you get it might change. So there's a very necessary processing part. I would even say like to a certain degree, like grieving, like for musicians, a lot of us lost our like a lot of gigs. I mean, my partner, he's a guitarist for Pink Martini, and he was going to go to like Estonia and like in France and Europe this summer. Like, not going to happen now, right? You know, like that sucks. Like, but there is space to give yourself time to process it and then say, okay, you know, ultimately, you know, what I create and generate in my life is my responsibility. So like, what am I going to do? You know, like what can I create? Yeah. So
it's just like writing music, and I've found so many parallels like in my industry, you know, where I make most of my money, which is food and beverage and restaurants. And it's always chaos. Like you just have to expect every day, like you come in and like there's going to be fires or leaks or just the most insane things. So some of us were like better prepared for this. It's just like the chaos is always there, or like live shows the same way. Like you just never know. Are you going to be the culprit that, you know, offers feedback to 10,000 people in the stadium? It's like, that's just normal for us, right? So a lot of us are just like, and a lot of us are used to living on the edge in terms of income, and like not knowing 6 months out what it's going to be like. I remember when I was freelancing, that was always the case. Like you're booked up and it's just like, but after that, I don't know what happens in August. And restaurants are always like, will we make it 6 more months? Can we make it 6 more months? You're just always gauging those little things. And I think you're right that there were a lot of people that were super comfortable and just thinking like, you know, Prince Charming was just going to sail you off into the sunset and then like a fly swatter slack.
No.
But that's real. That's totally real. Like this is one of the first times in human history where we're just like, oh no, like the amount of people that don't practice self-defense is remarkable to me, because there was never a point in history where you wouldn't grow up knowing how to defend yourself and your family and like learn weaponry and stuff like that. And people are just like, no, I don't need that. And you got another thing coming.
Really? Yeah, I know, right? You know, I actually, admittedly, I don't know self-defense except for
time
like,
to go, girl. As soon as they open the dojos,
right?
You're in the hotbed. You're in like Jiu-Jitsu Central in LA and San Diego, like some of the best instruction.
Oh yeah?
Is right there. Yeah. And particularly like, you know, my wife and my daughters all trained that as a prerequisite. Like you want to, for my kids, I'm like, oh, you want to go play out in the streets of New York? Yeah, guess what? You're going to learn to choke somebody for real. Like not like, oh, you know, like you're going to learn how to do it. And so that's just like this agreement that we have, and train them regularly. You're not going to run around the city without knowing some of that stuff. And it ups the whole game. Sorry for the background noise too. We got a little cacophony. This morning we've made 130 lunches for a homeless shelter and a hospital. And like literally we've been at the restaurant since like 9 a.m. cranking it out. And we finished about 10 minutes before I sat down to do the show. And so the guys are kind of cleaning up, and it's just like boom, 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 boom.
I love that. I love that so much. I feel like there's such a pull right now for like humanitarian work and like, what can we do? Yeah. What can we do? What can we do? And it turns out we can actually do a lot, you know?
100%.
You know, and so like I was just talking with you when we were catching up earlier this week. I got, I signed up to work with Local 802, which is the New York City Musicians Union. They're doing like a huge citywide virtual music festival right now for hospitals in New York City, having musicians of like all walks of life. In fact, they opened it up with like Tony Bennett playing. That's what I found out.
Cool. That's great. Tony Bennett. He's still alive?
I know.
Wow.
Oh, he's still gigging, man.
Keep him safe. Keep him safe. Yeah. That's crazy.
And it's so great because it's like, you know, it's just that opportunity to like give back, and like I get to perform like an hour of music dedicated to and specifically for the New York City hospital workers, and they all have like theme songs. They picked different like rock, like spirit theme songs. And I'm gonna try and like learn a couple of them and play them for the hospital and stuff. But you know, it's like it's a great time to, again, like I find humanitarian work actually wonderful in how it can kind of grow what you're doing in your like own sphere, because again, it's like a great way to like team up with people and sort of like embed yourself in communities you want to be a part of, because you know people will always rally around humanitarian work, it feels so good to do. It's so fulfilling. You get so many people on your team being like, yes, how can I help? And it's a really great, in addition, of course, to like the experience of like being of service and what you do, you also get to like lead something, right? You get to lead a project, and it's like a really great way to give back. I think it's just like, and give to yourself as well. You know, I think admittedly, like when I was like a 20-year-old kind of asshole, and I was just like, I'm not going to give my services away for a good cause. Like, you know, I was so stinky about it. And now that I've actually like contributed to like, you know, fundraisers and causes and services and like organize them myself, I'm like, oh my gosh, I was holding back on myself, you know, like I did not imagine like it could actually be this rewarding.
It's funny. I had this conversation a couple weeks ago. I had one of my first bosses and like early mentors. He's franchised his restaurants now. I worked for him in the early 90s. And we were talking about how you get into that vibe, because he's done that remarkably. His restaurants have given 50,000 meals away for free in the last 2 months. Like 50,000 meals. It's crazy. And that idea really for him and for me came like when my back was against the wall, and it's like, I'm going to lose everything, you know, and how do I not? And it became that sense of service and community. That was the only thing, 100%. Any of you out there listening who think like, oh, I want to open a business or I want to start this thing, it is the community. If you do not have the backing of the community, I don't care if it's like your locale or like the broader, like if you're in digital marketing, like you need the digital marketing community. If you're a musician, you need the music community. You know, you always have to have that. If you're out there like in the woods trying to clear the forest by yourself, it's going to be a long, hard road. That is so crazy and so true. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to pick back up with that and learn about how you got into this idea of service and coaching, which are super entrepreneurial, and how it's helped you during this period, and then like the forecast for the music industry, because damn. All right, everybody, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in just a minute. You're listening to the Entrepreneurial Web.